stage during it you want to, if I say something that you're kind of going, oh, you know, tell me more, or that brings up a question, you can just interrupt me, because it's a small, you know what I mean? I'm here to answer your questions, basically, and to help see if it makes sense for you, if in terms of if it's a match in any way, you know. Catherine, have you been doing yoga much, or are you sort of, what kind of yoga do you?
Well, I haven't been doing a lot at the moment, but I've done it on and off for probably about 10 years or so. So probably more hatha yoga, restorative yoga. I've been in a few yoga retreats. So yeah, so I know it's just something. Yeah.
Perfect.
And
perfect.
It's just something that maybe I might not. Yeah, just something I might think about. You know, something. I suppose for myself, but also maybe to use in the future as you know. Yeah.
Cool. And are you kind of thinking in the future of integrating into what you're currently doing, or having it sort of as a side that develops?
Maybe something, because I'm a teacher myself in a secondary school.
Oh, so perfect.
Because there is obviously opportunities with modules of fourth years, and there's a lot of well-being as well now being introduced into the junior curriculum. So it's something that might, you know, be something away from a lot of academics. So the school I teach in is quite academic. So there's a lot of it's just a lot of pressure on students now today. So you know what I mean? It might be something that I could bring as well.
Absolutely, and careers guidance, and for teachers themselves. I mean, you're right. Within that secondary school environment, there's so many opportunities to develop whatever you want to develop, really, because it can go in loads of different ways. Yeah, brilliant, brilliant. Okay, so for those who don't know me, I'm Laura, in case you hadn't figured that one out. And we have a studio here in North Kildare, just outside Maynooth, out in the countryside. So it's a purpose-built studio. That's kind of irrelevant, not relevant to the training, but it's there. And hopefully someday there'll be people actually in it again.
It's a gorgeous studio, absolutely gorgeous, and I miss it.
Yeah. Me too. I miss the people in it. It's funny because I still teach from down there, but it's yeah. But anyway, we'll be there eventually. I am I don't know where to even start. I'm doing yoga, I suppose, about 30 something years at this stage. I kind of found it originally in college, actually. I just walked into a room to study, and there was people standing on their heads, and I thought, oh, that's a bit cool. I wonder what that is. And I roped a load of friends into going back the next week, and they said it was yoga. I've never heard of yoga, didn't know what it was, anything about it. And myself and actually 3 lads, we continued all through our degree and all through our masters, practicing. At the end of about 6 years, I still couldn't do a headstand. So, but anyway, we don't worry about that. And then afterwards, I was looking for yoga out in the big world, you know, outside of a university, which didn't exist so much 30 years ago, and found the Healthy Way in Leixlip, which became a real hub. And I meet people all over the country who all came to the Healthy Way because it was the only place that was sort of doing yoga in Ireland at the time. Not the only place, but it was one of about 2 places that was doing yoga. And so that's where I ultimately ended up training with those teachers there. But the kind of yoga that I teach is very much hatha and restorative. We had a restorative class going for about 7 years, maybe. On a Friday night, it was one of the most popular classes. And recently, also my training originally is very much in therapeutic yoga. So I trained with Yoga Therapy Ireland. So hatha yoga into what is hatha? We were always about making the yoga fit the person. So even before that was particularly trendy. I mean, it's a very trendy concept to have now, but that was how we were originally trained. So, and I trained, like I say, in yoga therapy. I would do had a clinic, a yoga clinic where we would work with anything, everything. It could be simply stress. It could be through to people recovering from injury or from an operation. I worked in a rehab clinic in Dublin, where in that centre, again, I was in the deep end. Initially, some of the people had really, really restricted movement, to the point that the lady with the most restrictive movement was within a wheelchair, and her only free movement was of her eyes. Now we could support her move her limbs, but in terms of independent free movement, she could say yes and no. So that was pretty intense, I suppose, in terms of me getting over what does yoga mean, you know, because I kind of, in your training, you kind of think of it in terms of asana. And when you're working with people who aren't able to do asana, and yet they're getting massive benefit from it, not only from the physical, you know, actually being able to move their limbs and help them, but in terms of their breathing, in terms of the stress, in terms of, and being able to get feedback from people who were, like one of the gentlemen had MS, and he was quite far advanced, and advanced even further while I was working with him. So it was quite interesting in terms of the assumptions that we have often about how yoga can be used. And I suppose that very much informed my how I teach, and what I'm looking to do with the teachers that are training is to empower them to be able to find yoga within whatever the environment is that they are, and to meet who they're working with. But probably what's more interesting from my point of view about yoga is I came to yoga teaching. I was involved in education. I came to yoga teaching having burnt out numerous times. So I originally was in corporate in education, but in a corporate environment, and moved into management very quickly, burnt out, royally burnt out then. Moved from that into running my own training company, managed to burn out again. Moved from that into teaching in the Steiner school, burnt out again. So like by the last time, the work I was doing was really amazing. So I was in the Steiner school. I don't know if you know what that means, but it was a dream. It was a dream job. Working with these kids in a fantastic way, really holistic way. Then teachers, before we would meet any of the children, we would sit and meditate and hold space in this kind of amazing way. But in all of this, I still burnt out because I wasn't putting myself in the picture. I wasn't taking care of myself. I was in this, I'm really excited about what I was doing. I loved it, but burnt out. And when I burnt out nice and well. And so shriveled up and into nothing. So when I was recovering from that, I wanted to create an environment where I could still do the kind of work that I love doing, but do it in a way that really sustained me and supported me, so that I stopped this cycle of overdoing and burning out, overdoing and burning out. And what struck me was that being a yoga teacher seemed to me to be the ideal way of doing that, because yoga and meditation, I had a lot of meditation, because again, I was a stress bunny. So I had, when I was in school, actually someone taught me to do, we called it hypnosis, self-hypnosis. When I was in secondary school, a teacher took me aside because I was such a stress bunny and taught me self-hypnosis. Now, nowadays we would call that meditation, but at the time it was called self-hypnosis, because, you know, and so then after that, I did transcendental meditation, and then I did another type. So I've been sort of meditating as well as doing the physical asana for many years. But where it came to for me was that that if I was, as a teacher, suggesting to people that they looked after themselves, that they did a daily practice, then that would force me to do my daily practice, because I wasn't at that time. At that time, I wouldn't have been able to do it just because I should do it for should. I'd have been very good at the shoulds. I was always very good at the shoulds, but maybe not so good at being able to do it for myself, just because I should do it for myself, could do it for myself, and that it would be a useful thing and a helpful thing and a supportive thing for me to do. I still at that time needed the external support. And I suppose that the other thing that happened at that time was my mum died. And I remember it just struck me that she had spent her life trying to do something, to be something, to striving. And it was really, at that moment, I just thought, we don't need to do any of that. It was totally unnecessary. Beautiful, but didn't have to be done. I don't know if I can explain the subtlety there and the difference for you, but it was like, so for me, like a tree is a tree, and nobody complains about the tree taking oxygen or being a tree or doing tree things. So as humans, all we need to do is just be. We don't have to do anything else. And the fact that I find my dharma, I love doing this kind of work, is secondary. I don't have to do that work, this work, to deserve to be allowed to just be and breathe. I suppose that's kind of so that's kind of what brought me to becoming a yoga teacher full time, to use this support of having students that I would be talking to about this to support me do it for myself. So really it was for me about doing it for myself, and from there sharing it from this place with others, about really creating something that's sustainable and that nurturing, and that feeds, and I mean, you know, if you're fed the work you do, like if you go into a classroom tired and cranky, it just spills out all over the class. Like there's nothing else you can do. Whereas when you're like in the zone, suddenly the class is all brilliant for some day. Like it's magic, you know, the class just were all very great, you know. So we absolutely, we can't but affect it. And for me as a parent with kids, again, I wanted to be that place. I wanted to be worthy of imitation. That's all. And I wanted to be worthy of imitation in a way that's kind to me. And I wanted to support myself, heal my dharma, my like not good enough stuff, that will support my kids to learn from it just by osmosis, you know, that they won't have to strive as hard to prove themselves as I did. That's all very, very, not quite what I was planning on saying. So I'm not sure why I'm saying that, but that's sort of how I came about moving into full-time yoga teaching, was to find a way that I could be true to myself, who I am, while supporting myself and my family and my community. And so when we're doing this teacher training, for me, it's very much about this idea of nurturing ourselves, of supporting ourselves, of coming from this place of abundance within ourselves. So we're not giving away energy to other people. We are filling ourselves with energy and supporting the people to fill themselves with energy. So it's no longer this, I have it and give it to you. It's that together we create this support for each other to fill ourselves up and be whole in our nervous selves. And that this is, well, it's about marriage, this particular guy, but he says, you know, if you have a half and a half and you multiply a half by a half, you get a quarter. This is because of a maths degree originally, like, so I like these mathsy things, yeah. On the other hand, you could come wholly to it and have a half, and a half times a half is still a half. Whereas if you come wholly to the relationship and the people, your students, your partner, your kids, come wholly to a relationship, then you've got 1 times 1, which gives you 1. So this whole idea of wholeness for all of us is where I'm kind of coming from. Anyway, there you go. Not sure if any of that, how that lands or how that is, but that's kind of, yeah, that's what brought me to teacher training, to yoga. And I suppose I knew I was always going to be training yoga, teaching, because that's what I love training. That's my kind of buzz is training. And by working with people, what again, I wanted to work with people at a deeper level. And so we had the deep dive, which, you know, kind of got us going a little bit. And this allows us go a little bit deeper, a little bit more. And so for me, what this teacher training is about is creating an environment where we can dive deep into who we are, what is our dharma, how do we want to manifest our dharma in the world, and what do we need to do to support ourselves manifest this dharma in the world. It's not as woolly. The actual training is not woolly, but that's really the container for me, what it's about. It's about really playing for ourselves and discovering for ourselves kind of. And I love yoga for that, because yoga contains everything. It contains the physical body, it contains the mind, it contains the spiritual body, it contains, and there's no have to, there's no right way, there's no must, there's no dogma about it. So no matter what people's religion are, what people's physicality is, no matter what people's belief structure is, it's totally inclusive, because it's only about supporting people be as healthy and as whole for themselves as they can be. And we're not in any way prescriptive. And so that's, again, in terms of the teacher training, what I'm looking to support the student teachers be able to do. Anyway, any kind of questions before I kind of go into the content of the course? Enough.
I think if you tell us about the content, we
might
end up with a few questions because of that.
Perfect. So here we go. So I'm going to use the website just as a container to hold this within. So it's a 200-hour teacher training. It is.
Mic.
Say that again, sorry.
Your mic went down once you put that up.
Okay, and is it back up now?
What do the others think?
A little bit low. It's lower, yes. Yeah.
Oh, it's lower. Okay. Let me talk a little bit louder. Is that better if I talk like that? No?
Yeah, just as soon as you put that up, you
Pictures
sort
up.
of. No, I think you're okay.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're coming in and out.
Oh, shoot. Okay, I'll go to kind of, let me just go. Okay, I'm just going to go in the order that this is in. This is kind of the why you may or may not want to do it. So some of the kind of bigger concerns that people have. And then I'll come on to the syllabus. And you can kind of have a look at this afterwards. But in terms of not having a yoga body, well, that's grand. I don't, so we're fine. You're sorted. In fact, if you do have a yoga body, then you've probably got more things that you need to worry about and can be contained about, because you're not protected. So we talk a lot about that in the training, about how to look after people that have the very bendy bodies, because they can become, their hypermobility, actually our stiffness supports us, actually it keeps us safe. Having never taught before and are not sure if you want to teach both of them, within the training we bring you, now a lot of you, but a number of you are teachers, so that's not relevant, but for some people who are very nervous about the idea of teaching, you don't need to worry about it, because we build it up very slowly over the training, so that by the end you can hold the class very comfortably. But in the beginning, it's assumed that you can't even say your name out loud to a group of people. So it's assumed that you know teaching background, and we'll build on that. Not sure if you want to teach. That's another big one, because often, particularly for this level of training, a lot of people mightn't want to teach, or may not know what they want to teach, or may want to teach sometime in the future. So what I would be thinking is that it's a personal journey for starters. So that's the first thing, is that it's very much for yourself. And then how we share this with the world may or may not be a public yoga class. So what we think of in terms of teaching is always a kind of a public yoga class, but it may be, like we've talked about already, bringing it into other areas of work, or other areas within your community, within your family. So again, the practice of breaking down asanas to be able to teach them is very beneficial, to understand the asanas. And to play with that kind of way of learning is kind of cool. But in terms of how you manifest it, how you share this with the world at this point, it's completely open and, cool. Too long, too short, too hot, too cold, too fat, too thin. There's some student feedback there on the website if you want to have a little look at that. And then just to kind of give you really this syllabus, the content that we do. So we obviously work with asana. When we're working with the asana, the assumption is, it's not about how to do it. I'm working from an embodied yoga perspective, and it's talking about using the poses to support us do something. So we're not ever looking to get into dog, so you can say I was in dog or take a picture in dog. If you want, it's like, why do you want to use it? Are you looking to develop strength? Are you looking to develop mobility, stability, maybe a little bit of each? Maybe it's about finding release. Maybe it's about finding stillness. So you can use all of the poses for lots of different things. So as a trainee teacher, that's what we're kind of looking at, is how can you break down the poses to make them accessible? How do you use them for different types of bodies, for different types of comfort and discomfort, or for different purposes? So we could use the sun salutation to warm you up and to get you going, all active, or we could use the same set of sequence of poses, the sun salutation, but we could do it much slower, and we could bring it down. It could be your like before you go to bed sequence. We could use it with bolsters and turn it into a restorative sequence. So it's very much about how we use the different poses and what is the intention. What is your intention? It's all about intention. What is your intention behind it? And therefore how you can kind of develop the skills to be able to play. Pranayama, breath. Well, breath is the beginning, the end, and the middle of it all. So we introduce breath from the beginning. We look at how to find that within our bodies ourselves, and from there, then how do you empower other people to develop it? Looking at the kind of problems that often the barriers to being able to work with breath, and how to teach it in a way that's accessible both to ourselves and to our students. Meditation. Sonia actually teaches the meditation on this course. She's one of the another yoga teacher locally. And she has just finished her training with David G. If anybody knows David G.
I've just been on Sonia's. I was on Sonia this winter. I went to her Monday class and her Thursday class. So her Thursday was her meditation. And
exactly.
she introduced us to David G. So I've been listening to David G for the last few days on Audible.
He has such a gorgeous voice, hasn't he?
Hasn't he? Oh, it's so sexy.
Exactly. Yes. Very nice. So if you haven't been listening to David G yet, you go check him out.
Yeah.
So again, a lot of the yoga classes don't have the same focus on meditation. I remember when I trained, meditation was like just an add-on, kind of a very much, and it was an and meditation. Whereas, like I say, I've been practicing meditation as nearly as long as yoga, and Sonia and Katrina is another teacher that is a guest teacher on a teacher that's involved in it, and she also has done the David G training, and I've done the iRest, which the iRest training. So we've a good bit of, between all of us, we've a good bit of different meditation backgrounds. So the meditation, we'll be encouraging you to, again, for yourself, develop your own meditation practice if you haven't already got that. And again, building it up bit by bit by bit, looking at where do students find it difficult? Why would people find it difficult to learn meditation, to break into meditation? How can you make it accessible? How can you build it up? So it's kind of, again, it's one of the legs. The anatomy, oh my God, I love anatomy. Anatomy is deadly. The anatomy is in order to support the asana, in order to support the body. Now, I don't care if at the end of this training, you might not know the name of any single muscle. Well, hopefully you'll know the pelvic floor, but you might know the names of any of the muscles or the bones. I don't care. But what I do care is that you've got a integrated and functional understanding of how our bodies work. At this level of training, we work very much with the musculoskeletal system. Now, obviously, the nervous system comes into meditation, and the respiratory system comes into pranayama, but as in how you breathe. But we very much work with the musculoskeletal system, so how your joints work, how your muscles work, how your bones structure is supported. But it is functional, which means we care about how that we've got full range of movement, what works for you in your life, for people in their lives, and it's integrated. So it's no longer this idea that one muscle does one thing. The entire body is integrated. So even if you kind of just sitting down, maybe take your right hand and just pull your t-shirt at the right hand side down a little bit, just even pull it down a little bit. And you'll see that the entire t-shirt is moving, or top is moving. So it's moving from the left shoulder, it'll move on the back, the whole thing moves. Does that make sense? Can you sort of experience that on your t-shirt? And so when we're teaching anatomy, that's what we want. We want you to have an idea that just because that your knee is out of alignment, that might have an effect on your foot or your hip, that it's not just, you know, so it's functional and it's integrated. I have some phenomenal yoga anatomy teachers as well. So we'll be looking at some of the stuff that they're come up with. It's really kind of cool, I think, myself. The philosophy. So the idea of philosophy is, no, Myra, you know what we're in terms of, we did that in the deep dive, but here what we're looking at, we're using this book, the Bhagavad Gita, but the Bhagavad Gita is like the text that we leap off. Again, for the philosophy, it's about functional, practical, useful philosophy. So that's kind of the head. If you think of where we have the breath, we have the meditation, the spirit, we have the asana for the physical, the philosophy is your mind, it's the mind stuff. So looking at patterns that we have in our life, looking at our dharma, at what we want to do, but coming from sort of a bigger picture, thinky perspective, but very practical. For me, it's about how can I fight better with my husband? How can I choose whether to fight about that or not fight about that? How can I fight with him from an enlightened point of view? How can I deal with my kids coming from the place of an enlightened perspective, as opposed to a fear, less than worrying perspective? And so the philosophy is the kickstart for that. It's the foundation from which we play, the playpen we work in. The business of yoga. I introduced the business of yoga straight up. It's very useful if people want to run public classes, and most yoga class courses don't include this at all. And so you're left qualified as a yoga teacher, but no idea what to do with it, how to organize a class, how to get your information out. However, even if that's not of interest to you, or you teach, say maybe you're only going to teach within your school or teach within your work environment, which is already set up for you, or even not teach at all, the business side, in the beginning, it's very much about what it is you want from your life. So you're like goal setting and this kind of thing in terms of a bigger picture. So it's really useful even at that level. Now, later on, if you're not planning on teaching, you may never want to bother setting up a Facebook page or knowing how to post on Facebook. However, if that is of interest to you, then that, so you can take or leave as much of that as you like, but the beginning is set up for everybody, and then it develops so that you have those skills and resources later on should you want to teach public classes in the future. But my experience is that a lot of people come to yoga teacher training because of the yoga, and they want to share the yoga and the business side of it. Do I have to have an accountant? How do you charge? How do you tell people about you? How do you take a photograph of yourself? All of that kind of stuff. People are very often uncomfortable with it. And so just like the teaching, we assume nothing and we build it up tiny bit by tiny bit by tiny bit. And if you want to take this path, this is a voluntary path. Well, the whole thing is voluntary. You're adults, you can do what you like. But in terms of, this is not part of the examinable syllabus or anything. This is to support you to be successful yoga teachers. But it's built up tiny bit by tiny bit by tiny bit to build your confidence, because certainly from my point of view, it took me a long time to build confidence, to be able to speak about it and talk about it. And so this is what I'm looking to support you while you're still within that first year, just taking those baby steps and building that muscle, building that muscle, building that muscle. And so exactly the same with the teaching practice, the teaching theory and teaching practice, building that muscle, building that muscle, building that muscle, so that you can come from the beginning having to talk like this and tell me what your name is, and to be able to hold a class by the end. I give you a set of class plans. So while you can develop your own class plans, I give you a set of class plans so that for the first year, you can just reuse that set of 10 3 times. So that's your term, 3 terms, 10 classes a term, that you can reuse them. And I would recommend that you do that for the first year. So you use the same set of class plans for three times, because obviously it's not going to be the same every 3 times, but you will learn so much more and it'll come into your body if you don't have to think so much about planning, and you can be present in your class. And then having done that for the first year, then you can move more and more away and develop your own, but it will give you a structure, again, a playground, a bit of support to get you started, so that you can you're free to learn and to grow, because you don't have to do everything all at once. That's the kind of it. I'll talk about the schedule in a second, because the training is approved, authorized, what's the word I'm looking for? Accredited. It's accredited by the Yoga Alliance Professional, which is this is the English version of the organization that this training is accredited by. There's Yoga Alliance in America, there's a Yoga Alliance in India, there's a Yoga Alliance. So there's a number of different accrediting organizations. We're going with this one because it's English, so the insurance that you can get through it works for Ireland and England, and they work in Ireland and England particularly. They're based in England, but they work in Ireland and England. They're the big markets. So in terms of insurance, it's just they're handy. And in terms of contacts, in terms of training and all that kind of stuff. The qualification is international, so you can teach anywhere with it. If you want to teach in the States or in Canada, you need different insurance. Because it's the States and Canada, so what can you do? But in terms of your qualification stands, it's just that the insurance would be different. In terms of life nowadays, Zoom, again, you're based in Ireland, assuming you're based in Ireland, or based in Mexico, based in, I have a lady from Turkey. So you can teach internationally, but again, you can't teach into Canada or America without that extra bit of insurance. But yeah. Yeah. Okay, so far?
Yeah.
So let me just tell you a little bit about how it's structured, because I think this is unbelievably, it's amazing how it's working. I'm going to stop sharing, because that might give you better. Oh, I'm gone. Oh, go. So how is it structured? Just because I know that a couple of you are into education, I'll give you the long story. The long story is that when I was teaching so I have a degree I have a master's in computer science, but in the Steiner School, anybody who's kind of conscious of what that is, there's no technology, like zero technology. So my kids grew up with no TV. Well, my youngest one now, it's like the internet, she has a phone, it makes no difference. But my older kids grew up with no TV. And I don't know, whenever the Khan Academy started becoming popular, I was teaching in the Steiner School where we had absolutely no technology. My brother-in-law was constantly challenging me about how we should be teaching. And so I did a whole load of research, and what they were saying was, what Mr. Khan was saying was that what we should be doing is teaching the new content. Does everybody know what I mean by Khan Academy? No. Okay. So Khan Academy is it's an educational, it's education on the internet long before most of us ever had that kind of thing. And what they do is they break down the classes to small little modules, and you do your practice, you learn that, and then you do a practice test, and you can only go on to the next level once you know that step, whatever that step is. And so his argument was that we should be doing that we should switch our whole model of education. And so that the teachers in the classroom should be doing what we call homework, and the kids should be learning the new material at home on the computer, where they can take tiny little bite-sized chunks, check that they know it and they understand it before they move on. But then they can re-watch the video if they didn't understand it. They can spend as much time as they need to work with the new material at home, and then that their practice time is done with the support of the teacher in the class. And that the advantage of that using technology is that the teacher will know Johnny didn't get carrying his numbers in subtraction, and Mary is grand, she has that fine and dandy, but she got stuck somewhere else. And so that the children can work at their level without missing a step, and because it will show up if they're missing a foundation block. And then you can ask harder questions, but at the same level to kids that are moving on quicker. And that the teacher can manage all of that, and that the teacher then can do the one-to-one help with the student that needs the help in the classroom, rather than at home where they're getting lost and then they're asking their mammy for advice, and the mammy has a whole different way of teaching, and the teacher has, and the whole thing goes to hell in a handbag. Anyway, loads of research saying how fantastic that was as an idea. I was completely against it because, like, you know, I was just completely against it. Anyway, thanks to COVID, I've had to adjust. I've been challenged on how I want to teach, and I was holding off delivering this training for so long because I wanted it all in person. It turns out it actually works all right. You know, your man wasn't so far off the mark. So what we do is we have these little snippets, little videos each week that you receive. And then on a Thursday, we have our workshop. We have our tutorial time on whatever the material was that you got during the week. It means that if this is your area and you're like, oh yeah, I know that already, you don't need to watch it, or you watch it and you go, yeah, that's grand. If it's something that you want to hear a couple of times, you can do that. They're all in quite small little snippets. So if you do want to do a little bit every day, if you want to do one bit, you know, you can sit down and do it all in a big block. It's very much up to you and your life, how you manage that bit of it. Most of it is about getting you thinking about something, or getting you practicing something, or kind of playing with something. Hopefully it's more sort of thought-provoking than, like, you know, righty-downy schooly. So for example, when you're doing the anatomy on your knees or your feet, for an example, so there's the videos talking about feet, talking about the bones, talking about the muscles, talking about whatever. But what I'm asking you to do is during the week to notice what's happening when you're standing. Are you rocking on your feet? When you're walking, you know, do you land on one foot more than the other? So it's just during the week that you're kind of conscious of what's happening with your feet, and you might start noticing other people going, oh, she's sort of walking crooked on her shoes. That's really interesting. And so you have an entire month when we work with one particular area in the anatomy. The initial part, the first one is the anatomy. The second week is the asana around that anatomy. And then you've got another 2 weeks before we meet on the Saturday, where you can kind of just let that percolate, and you can start to notice it in your practice. And so in that is, the first week is anatomy. The second week is practice, a practice around that anatomy. The third week is pranayama and meditation. So for example, you might have a little, I think our first week, Sonia does square breaths. So that's your practice then. 2 minutes of square breath a day, you know, to see if you can build a habit into your life. The fourth week is philosophy and business, because again, they tie very much together, because what is it that you want to do? How do you want to do it, etc. Then we meet. So each of those, you're getting a drop, a video drop, normally video, sometimes it's voice, sometimes it's written. And then there might be extra things, there might be podcasts that might be of interest, but they're not critical, but they're kind of extra bits if you want it, if this area is of interest to you. Each Thursday is the tutorial, when we kind of see how you're getting on with that material. Have you got any questions on it? Do you want to workshop it? You know, we kind of work on there. And then on the Saturday, it means then that the Saturdays are completely free once a month to just play and practice. So on the Saturdays, we do our teaching practice, you do your personal practice, we do this fantastic thing, the sacred mirror, and we just maybe practice around some of the material that we've been doing, or we have an eye rest or yoga nidra. We just have this space. It's spacious for us to physically practice together, even if it's on Zoom, but it's play space where you can practice your teaching, experiment. You know, it's because there's no heady stuff. The heady stuff is done as such, if that makes sense.
So Laura, would you imagine that, you know, given that it's probably September we start, that we probably will do the Saturdays face to face?
I certainly hope so. That is my I'm afraid to say that out loud, but that is what I've been working with.
Yeah, so the Thursdays will never be face to face. They will always.
Face-to-face. Exactly.
That's grand. That's no problem. So the commitment is all the Saturdays.
Yes. Yeah.
The
And
Saturday.
then so the Saturday once a month, and it's a Saturday as opposed to a weekend. And again, this is very intentional because all the teacher training is done typically on a weekend. So it's a Saturday and Sunday, or it's a Friday, Saturday and Sunday. And my experience of that is that by Monday, you are catching up on the last week. And it's before Wednesday, before you've caught up on whatever you haven't done for the weekend, you haven't put your wash on or whatever. And so by the end of that week, you've completely forgotten that you're on a teacher training. And then it's a month before the next one. And the Friday beforehand, someone rings you and says, are you sharing a lift? Who's driving? Are you driving or am I driving? Oh, have you got your homework done? You're like, what? Because life just kind of happens. So what my intention is to have a little bit all of the time so that it can really become part of our practice, part of who we are, and kind of infiltrate our life differently. For one of it. Does that make sense?
Does.
The other thing that's been fantastic and that I was very nervous about is the Thursdays work really, really well in terms of getting to know each other, because there's that every week you're meeting. So the group is really, the support in the group is much stronger because it's not you're not starting again every Saturday. And actually what Katie was saying, she was on one of these there with me, and she was saying that what had happened was when she's been on other training, you get your cup of tea and you go and you sit with Mary Jane the first week, which means the next week when you come, you get your cup of tea and you go sit with Mary Jane and Henrietta over in the corner. You kind of never really connect with her, but because Zoom is constantly setting up the breakout rooms all the time, you're just meeting new people all the time. So that whole thing has actually broken down now. So, very quickly, everybody knows everybody quite well, which is again a kind of an advantage, a cool spin-off. And we use breakout rooms a lot because other than that it'd be. And if we do have the Zoom calls on the Saturday, it's sort of a 90-minute block, 30-minute break, 90-minute block, hour break, 90-minute block, 30. And that's actually working quite well as well. So you're not. And actually, I'm going to tell you something cool. The first week of the Zoom calls, I overheard someone talk about how they put on a wash, in between, on the breaks. So I, support them, maybe not doing that, and talked about how maybe if they have people in the house, they could be the people that do the cooking for you, or if you don't, you could just kind of set it up differently. So by the third Saturday, I again overheard a conversation, only this time the conversation was about how one of the girls had gone and put on a face mask, and for her hour break, she had a face mask and she had laid down and she had her lunch brought up to her, and it's been, so there's some advantages. So it's kind of cool.
That's great. I did notice you were doing it last year, and I was kind of really against it with the Zoom. But I was every so often I said, oh, I'll send you an email, and then I thought, no, I'll wait. And when I saw you were coming up again this year, I said, oh, come on, we have to be vaccinated.
Yeah.
We should be able to do the Saturdays, we hope.
Yeah, and the thing is, even if the first 2 or 3 Saturdays aren't, I'm no longer, I was holding off because I had this whole thing, it's not going to be as good on Zoom, it's I had this real bias against it, but I think it's the quality of the material that we're doing, as in people are I think that it's different to learning maths on Zoom. It's a different experience. So I think that's why, because I've done a retreat, and also I suppose I was midway through teacher training when it changed, and so I know from what as a participant what I didn't like. So there was too much teaching, not enough interaction between me and the other women that were on the course. So I've made sure there's a lot of that there, because we learn so much from each other. It's not like I'm the oracle of all this information. everybody's life experience really contributes to it. So there's a lot of space and time for that, which is missing, which is often missing from the Zoom environment. You know, you don't get to go to lunch together, which is where that transition, you know, where that kind of stuff would have happened traditionally. And so I think taking that out of the training would have killed it completely. And that was my experience in the training I was on, that it went really flat. So there's a lot of that space in there, so that it's not as, it's not a top-down type of thing, you know. It's not a like, and that's the advantage of the videos. The videos gets all that kind of stuff handled at your own time, in your own pace, in your own space, so that when we're together, we can actually be together.
Yeah.
How do you assess the modules then?
Thank you. I knew there was something. It's funny, it's like, oh, there's something that I haven't said. Okay, so fundamentally, for me, everybody that comes here is an adult and is looking to most. I haven't yet met anyone who's not wants to fundamentally do it for themselves. So that's where I'm starting from. I'm not looking to accredit someone who does gym, what you call them, kettlebells, and wants to teach yoga. You know, that's not who comes on my training, because there's much quicker and cheaper ways of doing it. If all you want is a piece of paper, I'm not the person that people come to. So that's the sort of foundation that it kicks off on. So in terms of a participation, all that's required is participation. You know, so and what that looks like for different people will be different, depending on what stage people are at in their life, what's going on for them. Separate to that is the teaching qualification. So the teaching qualification requires people to be able to teach safely and effectively, because that affects all of us. And yeah, it affects obviously their own students, but it also affects all of us if people are not capable of teaching yoga when they go out with a teaching qualification. So I'm very precious about the teaching aspect of the teaching qualification. And therefore that is not by default. People don't just automatically get that. I don't mean they get, you know, anyway, you know what I'm trying to say. So in terms of going through that, the anatomy has kind of questions at the end of each session to support you know whether you've understood it or not. And like I say, I don't care whether you know the name of the bones and the muscles, but I do care about whether you are doing something that's not safe in terms of the teaching of the poses. So all along then the teaching is supported, and you're supported. So you put in your spiel about how you're planning on teaching it, so you're going to getting feedback both from me and from myself and Katrina. Kind of keep an eye and give feedback as is required. The intention being that you develop these skills, and if there's a problem that we find out earlier and it's addressed, so that by the end, the assessment time, you're just showing off your ability, as opposed to that the problem has been well addressed long before that. So in terms of the formal assessment, it is a class at the end where you work in two groups, and you split out the class, you plan the class, and you deliver, you co-deliver classes. But like I say, there's kind of an ongoing checking in continuously the whole way through. Okay. So that's the main teaching thing. There's also 2 assignments through it, but they are again for you for your learning log. So at the end of everything, sort of a learning journal, and I'm kind of monitoring that to make sure that we're kind of hitting, that I'm not going way off the target. But a lot of that is very personal. So what one person gets out of it may be different from what another person gets out of it, but I'm getting that feedback to know that we're kind of on target. And then there's 2 written assignments where you're doing it for yourself. You're going back over your own learning logs and sort of saying, where am I at now? Where was I at then? What have I got to? Where do I want to go to? And again, they're not assessed. They're stop points. And again, it gives you feedback, gives me feedback, but it's not a pass or fail. The pass or fail side of it is only on the teaching aspect of it. Okay. Yeah.
I just want to know about the workload, and that's fine. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so in terms of the workload, so thank you. In terms of, and I even have this written down, that one of the ladies asked me to talk about the workload. So in terms of the workload, the material that I give you each week will be between 20 minutes and an hour, and some of them might even be an hour and 20 minutes, but that might be where you're doing a practice, so you'd be kind of practicing along with it. So that's kind of the new material. Once a week, then there's the hour class, the tutorial class. You would also have your own personal yoga class, so whatever class you're going to, or you can come to me. So again, that's an hour to 90 minutes, depending on what class you're going to. So over the year, you need 36 hours. So if you're ill or if there's whatever, you could make that up with workshops and stuff, you know. So, but that's your weekly yoga class that you're doing anyway. And then on top of that, I'm strongly encouraging you to have a personal practice. In the beginning, that'll be 10 minutes, and then it might develop. And depending on your life, that could develop. It depends on your life. 30 minutes, maybe half an hour. 30 minutes is half an hour. Maybe 30 minutes. Maybe for some people, you might have the space to have an hour practice. But in the beginning, it'll be 10 minutes, and I'm offering there's a beginner's yoga course, which has about a 25-minute practice that is really over 5 weeks, over 7 weeks actually. So that's available for people to really help bed in a personal practice if you don't already have a personal practice. And that would be daily, ideally. Then there's the one Saturday a month. And then there is one extra day if you're interested in the business. That's a voluntary day, or not voluntary, that's a bonus day. And then there is the retreat, which I didn't say about. So there's a retreat, and the idea of the retreat is that it can be a retreat. So if there's anything that people want more of or less of, well, not less of, I can't do less of, but if you want more of something, we can kind of focus it around that. But really, that's for me about the immersion. That's about being able to sit and chat all night, or eat and walk in space. It's spacious yoga classes and connections. So that's one weekend. The date yet to be defined because no one is letting me book dates yet.
And the current class can't get that at the moment then?
Yes, so at the minute, the current class, we're hoping to go for October, and maybe if it worked, we could do both together, because that'd be really nice to meet each other, you know. So yeah, we'll see. So fingers crossed. And then that's it. Isn't there anything else?
How many will you take on the course, Laura, or what's your minimum or maximum?
My minimum is 10. My maximum is 14, 15 probably is probably what I'm going for.
Mm-hmm. And what you have on the current course, you got
14.
Oh, excellent. Brilliant.
Yeah. And it's a really nice number, because enough that you're not, and not too many, it's kind of. And the other thing, so there's, in terms of the tutors on the course, there's myself, Katrina, who is also, she's a phenomenal teacher. She has done gazillions of training. She does sound healing, meditation. She does a lot of embodied, and it's kind of interesting. We both come from an embodiment. Originally, all three of us are Yoga Therapy Ireland trained. And then both myself and Katrina, and then all of us went to Lisa for another level of training. And then I stayed with Lisa, did my, I just completed another 500 hours with Lisa Peterson, but Katrina went to a different embodied yoga teacher. And so she comes with the same material, both from the same fundamental teacher, but we both come at it slightly different. So that's kind of nice that you've kind of got slightly different takes on the same material, but we're coming from the same place, but slightly differently. And like I say, then Sonia does the meditation. So, and then for depends on what people want in terms of the retreat. Then there might be other teachers. I had other teachers lined up for the May retreat. We'll see what happens. Just again to give you kind of different tastes of how you could do it. You know. And we had this phenomenal lady on pelvic floor. So we had her last week. So she did her session with us last week. Pelvic floor health. So. Yeah.
Mm.
The other thing I was going to say is, oh yeah, so sorry, have you any other kind of questions before? Let me just check whether I answered the questions that I got emails about.
The cost, Laura, and the early bird and the rest. Can you give us the practicalities for?
Okay, cool. Okay, so on a practical level, the super early bird, which is on now, is 2,200, or there's a monthly payment plan that there's 14 months. If we go now, we've got 14 months before it finishes. So that we're splitting it out the whole way until it finishes at €160 a month. So that's fantastic because we can split it over 14 months, which is great. Now, there are 5 places at that. So whenever they're gone, they're gone. And the last date that can possibly be is I've forgotten now, the 23rd, because obviously we finish in September on the last date in September. But there's 5, so there's 3 places already gone on that. So there's 2 places, there's 2 places still available at that price for the super early bird. Yeah, and that, like I say, split over that monthly payment. And then what I'm actually also, actually I never said to you that there's mentoring in it as well. There's 2 mentoring slots, one in the beginning and one at the end. And then if you know you want to do this and you're kind of like, the thing is, you can set up a call with me, you can chat to some of the students, you can watch any videos, so whatever you need to do, because I think it's really important that we're a match. Because like it's kind of cool. I think it's a kind of cool journey, but it's a very personal journey. And there are so many, so if you're just doing it from the point of view of getting a qualification in yoga teacher training, well, that's one thing. But if you're looking at it from your own personal journey, finding a match with people that resonate with you is kind of cool, because you get to work with these people and they get to support you and you get to support them for a year. So there's me and the other people, and that's why I suppose I put, excuse me, I'm just going to cough now. Let me mute myself before I cough. Sorry. Because so it's worth, from my perspective, I would love to put in as much time as necessary up front so that we know whether it's a match, because the last thing I want is people expecting something that it's not, and expecting to learn how to do headstands and backflips, and then you're going, what is all this restorative stuff here? Like, really, why aren't we, who cares about, I don't know, one of the teacher trainings, and I heard people complaining that there was philosophy on a yoga teacher training. You're kind of thinking, okay. So like I say, I will give you sample classes, whatever it is, to make sure that you have that it's a match, because I think that's the most important. However, if you do know that then there is a bonus of a coaching session afterwards to get yourself, well, you can use it beforehand if you want, for anybody that, if you signed up before Sunday. So if you know that you're coming, sign up before Sunday.
Sorry, I missed you. You suddenly went when that other girl left, your sound went again.
Oh, okay. I'm just saying that there's a coaching session, a one-to-one coaching session for anybody that signs up before Sunday. But be sure, do you know what I mean? If you know you're doing it, great, sign up before Sunday. If you're not sure, be sure, but rather, you know what I mean? But it's, anyway, that's an extra bonus.
So that's the super early bird, just for what would the early bird be, and what's the other one?
The other one is it's 2,200, 2,400, and 2,600. So they're the 3 prices.
Right.
super early bird is 2,200, early bird is 2,400. So that would be the next price block. And then 2,600 is the full price.
And is it 12 Saturdays? Is it?
It is not 12 Saturdays, it is actually 9 Saturdays, and then the
Great.
bonus.
Grand. Like there's
10
not
Saturdays.
it's not a Saturday in July of August the following year. Is that
Exactly.
great?
No July in August.
I don't want to be tied to a Saturday.
Yeah.
In July of August the following
No.
year.
Don't worry, no classes July and August, no Thursdays, no nothing. Even the ones that this year, there's nothing in July and August so people could go away.
Yeah. Well, I don't mind the Zooms, but
yeah.
So it's 9 Saturdays, and so we start in September,
Mhm.
and
It
it
must
goes.
be 10 Saturdays because it's Saturday. There's 10. It must be 10 Saturdays. Start in September, October, November, December, January, February, March, April, May, June. 10 Saturdays.
10, yeah, grand. And does it finish then at the end of June, or?
That's it. Finish the end of June.
So
So
September.
the one at the end of June will be that's why I'm counting 9, because it's 9. There's 9 teaching ones. The 10th one is the assessment.
Yes, yeah. And the retreat could be at any stage.
Yeah, now what I'm looking at doing, but I can't book it because they're not answering the phones, they're not taking bookings. If I could book it for October, I'd nearly do us all together, have the one retreat with everybody, because then you can get to know each other, and then the others everybody gets to meet. You know what I mean, in terms of having that space. But I'm not sure. Like, who knows? Like, if with COVID and whether they'll take that many in the one place, or who knows.
Where was it you were looking at?
I was looking at Imoth, out on Swords.
Lovely.
And I'm not sure, see, because your 2 meter distance, I think they have loads of accommodation. It's the room to make sure that and then the other place was Tala, in the Priory in Tala. But they're also not talking to us. So if you have any ideas, actually, I'll take any suggestions. If you have any suggestions.
Down the country.
I'm trying to make it easy for people to get to.
Yeah, true. Might get a local parish hall in Wicklow, and people would stay in there. But look, if we all got together, it'd be amazing.
Yeah. I mean, May is the original date for the original intention for the retreat was, I think it's the weekend in May, the May weekend. That was when
that can happen now. No.
Yeah, well, this one's definitely exactly, and then that was but yeah, because it has to stay away from Christmas and stay away, but anyway.
I've asked loads of questions, Catherine. You can ask the rest.
Yeah, no, I think, I just was wondering about the assessment, the time, like how much time it would be, because I suppose everyone's quite busy. I did a course myself before Christmas, and it was just, it was a lot of kind of, I suppose quite content heavy. So I was hoping, that this wouldn't be that. Do you know what I mean? That it's not all. And then I suppose just about the poses, like I've been to yoga classes myself. Like, I'm not sure if I'm very technically great. Like, I enjoy yoga. Like, I suppose I haven't been doing a lot the last year, but before that I went to a lot of restorative yoga. So I quite enjoy that restorative yoga. So that would be one thing that would put me off, would be the whole technical thing. Do you know what I mean? About having all these poses and being, so that's something that possible.
Well, I mean, Moira, you could even tell her how I teach. It's not technical.
No, it's lovely. It's lovely. That's why I'd look at it. I've seen loads of teacher trainings, but I wouldn't go because I'll be 60 now in June. So going in as a 60-year-old to some of those teacher training courses, like, you'd be feeling, I'd be all those young ones in the, and very technical and the rest. So if I teach afterwards, I'd be thinking of teaching maybe older people. Or very young people. I wouldn't be thinking of teaching people in their 20s, 30s, 40s who want a certain type of activity yoga. I would love, my mother-in-law is 90, but somewhere between when she was 80 and 90, there's so much there, the chair yoga, those sort of things. I'd love to do that for people.
So much, and they make such an impact to people that age. The smallest little thing will make such huge impact. It's so beneficial, so beneficial.
I don't need to be the perfect pose, because you know me, Laura. Not.
Yeah, but definitely, I mean, so never was I overly into the perfect poses. And when we learned originally all the alignment kind of stuff, it was about safety. So it wasn't about, you know, some of the things are take your right foot out 90 degrees, your left foot heel in line with arch of the foot and all this kind of technical kind of stuff. All of that is not only do I not teach it, I strongly don't believe in any of it. I think it's all a load of nonsense, because people's bodies are not uniform. So how could you possibly ever give a uniform instruction to a group of people? It just doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And when you look at some of the stuff, like next month, we're starting pelvis with the current crowd. So I have photographs of skeletal pelvises. And when you see how completely different 3 pelvises are, and to think that you would give the same instruction to a group of 12 people, that kind of specific instruction to a group of 12 people, it's completely nuts, because it's unachievable for probably anybody in the room. And the teacher's probably teaching from their own body, because that's all they know. So this is very much where I'm coming from. It's about an inquiry. So if we are using down dog as the pose, why are you using it? What happens to the person that has the doggedy wrists, that can't put weight on their wrists? What is the effect? Do you want to like feel something in your backs of your legs, or is it in your spine? Why are you doing it? So you can, like, I can't tell another person what they should do to have a particular experience. And not only that, why do I want them to have any experience? You know, where are they coming from? What is it that they're looking for? What are they inquiring about? And so the whole dynamic is shifting, so that my role is to create space and to give people some suggestions to work towards if that's of interest to them. And definitely, so the whole idea of correct alignment, and so I would call this safe. There's definitely safe. Yeah. And so, for example, not doing half of the stuff that you see on Instagram would make it safe. I mean, I was looking at somebody's post there today, and they said this is for people with limited mobility. I'm looking at them going, what person, like, you've clearly never taught anybody with limited mobility. Like, I'm not bad. I'm not exactly, you know, I'm not hypermobile, but I've got pretty good functional mobility, and there's not a chance and passes roar I could do what you're looking at doing. Like, what? It's just, it's nuts. It's nuts. But I'm also very conscious of that people might be teaching those people, because, like, you know yourself, the people are attracted to what they're good at, and if they're into the Instagrammy stuff, it's about supporting teachers who may be teaching those young people how to keep them safe. There's no problem keeping the grannies in the chairs safe. They're happy out because they're stiff. If we're stiff, that stiffness is going to protect us because we can't do it. It's the hypermobile ones that damage themselves. So how do you keep them safe? How do you talk to them in their head so that they won't push so much? Because really, that's what our biggest problem is. It's not the bodies, it's the heads that want to push, to push, to push. So how can you engage them in a way that they can give themselves permission to stop? Yeah, you know. But and the restorative yoga, I have one lady, she's actually doing the teacher training with me now. And I know my yoga is too slow for her. You know, when she came to my hatha class, it used to crack her up. She would be going mad, and she'd find it, you know, she'd be like frustrating. But she used to come to my restorative class, which obviously there was no movement in, or, you know, very little movement, and she was happy out, you know. So even some of these kind of real driven people, the restorative yoga is such a beautiful way of, you know.
Yeah. I could do the restorative day in, day out.
Yeah. And that's what we need. That's what we need more of. We definitely need more mobility because of how we live. But we can get that opening with restorative yoga. We don't need to be jumping up and down like bunny rabbits and, you know, hipping and hopping.
You're not doing the restorative online. I
No,
see.
I'm not doing it online. No, I'm not doing it online because my kids were home on a Friday evening and I wanted to hang out with my kids.
Yeah.
There's a huge market. I will support any teacher do your restorative yoga. Friday night is a brilliant night. The other difficulty with restorative online is all the props. So there's a lot of languaging around helping people figure out how to prop. So if they've been to a class, it's very easy, but
yeah, lots of people are using double pillow. Sonia has done some, well, it's hatha, but she's using kind of restorative things, and she's everybody with pillows and stuff. I have my bolsters at home, but everybody,
the memory foam pillows
for anybody who hasn't all the stuff, the bits and pieces, you know.
Yeah, and people can get frustrated, you know, kind of thinking that they're not getting. But again, it's only about supporting them become educated in it. So there's ways of doing that. Like you could have a session where you're teaching them how to use props only, and then go and teach them the yoga. You know, it's all, you can get around it all. It's not. Yeah. Cool. Well, I have kept you a lot longer than I was planning.
That's very interesting.
Well, I'm fine. I think I've got everything. The teaching part doesn't worry with me because, like Catherine, I'm a teacher by profession, so that part of it is that's something that we won't worry about. But it's more kind of it's the yoga and the anatomy and the rest. You know, there's loads of learning in that, and the business.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and all of it. If you think of it, so in terms of learning, it's hopefully there's a lot of learning in it, because otherwise what's the point? Like, you know, it is to learn, but it's all experiential learning. So here's an example, like what is embodied yoga. So we've talked about it in terms of what do you feel in your body and doing, and so there's cool things in terms of that, how to reconnect that to really develop and deepen your own practice and become embodied in your own practice, and to notice, oh wow, I thought I was doing yoga, but maybe I wasn't quite as in my body as I believed. So there's a huge body of work there. But even like when we're doing something like the business side of it, so one of the exercises is like, imagine what you would charge for a yoga class. So kind of just picture that in your head. Have you got a price in your head? Right. So feel how that feels in your body. Imagine yourself asking someone for money. Okay, now double the amount of money. Okay, yeah, exactly. So now double that amount of money and ask for that. Imagine how you ask for that. And so can you feel that in your body?
Yeah.
So this is where I'm talking about embodiment. We're looking at everything from this lens, you know. So because fundamentally we know, you know, but we don't trust ourselves. So what is the barriers? So it's those kind of, the learning, a lot of it is in like going, whoa, that I can feel that in my body. My entire body is going, there's no way, you know. And what is that about? Can I breathe through that? Okay, what is it about? Is it a belief that if it's good, I shouldn't charge for it, or or I'm not, you know, what's the belief structure that's going on? So that's the kind of philosophy, you know. It's all very integrated, experiential, rather than sitting down writing essays. But hopefully a lot of learning, you know, and different people will be pop at different things, you know, popcorn, different times, different things.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Great, thank you for that. It was very interesting, and thank you for your time. And yeah,
you are very welcome.
Thanks very much, Laura.
Oh, it's good to see you. Say again.
Oh, it's the awkward part at the end when you have to leave.
That's okay. I'll turn it off so that it won't be so. But cool, yeah. So let me know, and if you want to know anything more, give me a shout or whatever, or if you want, you know. Yeah, cool. And hopefully we'll see you.
Yeah, I'm interested. I'll be in touch.
Brilliant.
Thank you very much.
Brilliant.
Good to meet you, Catherine. I might see you in September.
Bye.